Ciao tutti! I am so excited for you to join me on this journey of gratitude stories, where I gather stories of others who have had gratitude expressed face to face, how it's made a difference in their life. You can make a difference every single day expressing gratitude. Join me on this journey. Don't wait to express gratitude today.
Ciao a tutti, it's me, KP Speaks, and I have my little sister with me today. That sounds so funny because she's all grown up, but I always will consider her my little sister. Her name is Kaylee Bradford, and she is so inspiring to me. She was born when I was almost 18 years old, and we have 6 brothers in between us. So we both grew up as an only girl, and she's had to really fight for what she's wanted in life. Kaylee, she speaks, is it Mandarin or Cantonese?
Cantonese.
Okay. I know I should know those things. She
Everyone
speaks
switches it up.
Cantonese, and not only that, but she wanted to attend an Ivy League school for her graduate school, and she's done it. And that's what inspires me about her. Whenever she's had a goal in life or has put her and set her mind to something, she's gone for it. So Kaylee, will you kind of weave your story for us for how you've been able to get yourself to where you are?
Man, yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. But so I started out, it kind of actually came from a hard experience my senior year of high school, where I was hurt by a friend of mine, and realized a lot of self-reflection that I was judgmental and that I didn't understand what had been going on in the world. And so I decided to go and search for it. And I landed on human trafficking as my passion at that time, to kind of really dive in to see what I could do to make the world better. And so that took me on a journey into Uganda and Rwanda area, where I was doing research there and working with community members and victims of trafficking while I was there. And then when I spent some time living in Hong Kong and working with some domestic workers there, and kind of hearing their story of Filipinos living in Hong Kong and the mistreatment that happens there. And then I came home and kind of dove right back into it. I was working the Attorney General's office there in Utah at the time on a task force, um, and I was also doing some rape crisis line, kind of really trying to feel like I was doing something about these issues that I had learned so much about. But I needed a really good self-care moment, and I learned about myself. So I quit everything, and I decided to try something new. And so I did some rehab work with women and children and decided that wasn't for me either. And so I ended up focusing on one thing I noticed as a correlation between all these different injustices, and that was a lack of education. And so I dove into refugee education, which is now what leads me to get my master's degree at Columbia University. And I'm studying international education and development. So I have a focus on peace and human rights education. So how we can, through education, to kind of fight against these really big injustices around the world. So that's what I do.
I see. I've never even heard her explain, why she does what she does. I just know she delved into some really deep and hard things to help women and children. And every single time she would go and do these things, she was still able to stay afloat, which I felt was absolutely amazing, because most people, if you were to go into, let's say, rape crisis or human trafficking, or women and children, women that are abused, or women who are also addicted to drugs and have their kids, most people are not able to still feel like the world is a good place. And Kaylee somehow was able to still stay there. How did you do that, Kaylee? I don't even know.
It's a constant battle. I think there are moments in every day where I get frustrated, and I feel um, blindsided again and again by new things or worse things, or just this constant frustration of why can't anything seem to get better no matter what we do. But I think the main thing that has kept me viewing the world as a good place and as people as innately good is understanding that each person has their own story. And just because I see a result of something that I think is awful and horrible and should never happen, I don't know all the things that led up to that point. And I I have the belief that everybody's innately good, but due to circumstances or their own experiences in their lives can lead to something that's really bad and then doing something that isn't okay. And so I guess believing, as idealist as this sounds, believing in humanity, and that it's still in there, regardless of what they've done, has helped me to forgive people who have done these things to people that I'm working with, but also to have a hope that somehow, in some way, each one of us can find and inspire that humanity back into these situations. So, yeah,
Thank
but
you.
it is a battle.
It is. It's
There
a
are
constant
moments,
battle.
I may not seem like it, but there are moments of like, like I can't, why is everyone doing these things? And why can't I do anything? But I think overall, that's kind of what keeps me going.
So for those who are listening or watching, what advice would you give to them about being able to make a difference? Like what, usually we're like, oh, it's just too big of a problem. I'm just not even going to do anything.
Yeah,
What would you say to that one person? What is a micro change that they could make that can make a difference?
it's a good question. I think first off, recognizing that all of these things, and the more you learn about it, can be paralyzing. You can feel like it's just too big, and I can't do anything about that. But a micro change is every day you can do something to help make a difference. And that doesn't mean you're going to solve these issues. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's no more hunger in these different areas, right? But you helping someone or feeding someone that one day is solving hunger for that one person. And that can make a world of difference as they turn and they help people around them as well, because now their belly's full and they have more capability to help people around them. So focusing on the little aspect of every day you can change a little bit in somebody's life, and that in turn has a magnitude of an effect worldwide.
That is so beautiful. It's totally like what I talked to someone else about the ripple effect. That one little, it's even just a pebble, but a pebble still makes a ripple, and that ripple continues on. So that person's day, she might treat her children, or he might treat his children differently, or a different person differently, and you have no idea of the compound effect of that one instant of kindness that you have just offered to somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
So I have a question for you. Of course, this is Gratitude Stories. What role has gratitude had in your life?
Gratitude has been huge in my life. And it is one thing that has kept me to stay afloat, because lots of times I feel when I do interact with so many situations that are really hard to handle, I often look at myself and I say, like, well, why do I have what I have? Why me? Why not somebody else? Like, why do these women end up in these situations and I don't? And that can be hard because sometimes you don't feel like you deserve what you have. Oftentimes, I would say in my life. But I've recognized that feeling undeserving of what I have is in turn hurting the people who don't have. And so fostering gratitude for what I have and using what I have to benefit others has been a huge part of keeping me sane, but also keeping me optimistic in the work that I do, because it is really heavy. But just recognizing that every moment that we're grateful or share gratitude with somebody else is a moment that we're creating change. And because so many times gratitude isn't shared. And so I think it's played a huge part in my life of being grateful for what I have and how much I have, but also being grateful for the little moments of everything. I don't know. Moments I have to introspect, moments I have to love someone else, moments I have. They don't necessarily have to be gratitude for material things, but gratitude for life itself, I guess.
Mm. Have you had someone impact your life by expressing gratitude to you?
Yes, there have been many times, but one moment that sticks out to me, I was in Uganda and I had been working at a trafficking safe home. So these children had been trafficked, but they had been rescued and they were staying at this safe home until they could be returned back to their families. And there was this younger boy, he was probably about 12, I think, at the time. And I had been doing some interviews with him and just kind of playing around with him, getting to know his story and where he came from. And I noticed he had this like metal washer, or it wasn't a washer, but this metal piece of gear that he had gotten stuck on his finger because he wanted to wear it as a ring. And I noticed underneath it was like chafed and bleeding, some like you couldn't get it back off. And we were about to head out to leave, and I just felt like, man, I gotta do something about that. Like I can't just let this kid run around with a thing stuck on his finger and not do anything. So I went and ran to our van, and luckily I had some hand sanitizer in the van, and so I went and helped him to wriggle it off, and underneath was like decaying basically. So it had been on there for a long time, and you could tell because it was thick, so there's no way of bending it or anything. And he looked at me with these eyes of like no one had done that to him in a really long time. I've cared for him in a way that in something so small, and he said thank you, and he had this big huge smile on his face, and I said you're welcome, and that's it. I gave him a hug and I had to leave after that. But that moment impacted me so much, and that's kind of, I look back on it often, that the little things, you never know what somebody's going through, but little things like helping someone get metal off their finger that's been stuck there for a long time may be the only thing that they've felt has someone's done nice to them in a really long time, or has made them feel loved by a complete stranger, which they may never have felt before, but you don't know that. And so that moment continues to stick out in my life as a moment where that's motivating, but also a moment where I felt a real connection through his gratitude, and for my gratitude to him for letting me help in that moment.
I'm crying over here. Oh, oh, that's beautiful. So, what do you do? You have this connection, you have this moment of gratitude. What do you do with it? For me personally, I, it's almost like this moment in time just stops, and it it's elongated. It's this moment of wonder and awe, which I like to talk about and speak about. For you, it's almost, it sounds like it's like this moment of time just stops, and it's solidified in our memory of a moment of peace and joy and happiness. For that boy, you actually probably could have saved his life, because with that type of thing going on with his skin, he could have had a bacterial infection, or, I'm not a doctor, but I'm sure the doctors that are watching are like, yeah, that's really bad. But so if you had anybody in the universe that could be in front of you right now and you could thank them, I want to know, who is it that you would thank, and what would you say to them?
It's a good question. Can it be a multitude of people?
Sure.
They all have one category, but it's not like one specific person.
Okay.
I guess I would say thank you to every mother who has ever born a child into this world, and regardless of what that experience was like. But I am thanking them for creating life and for creating the beauty that I see every day that keeps me living and keeps me enjoying what I do, and that's human beings. So thank you to the mothers everywhere throughout all of time who've gone through a lot to raise and to nurture and to survive themselves through this process of fostering life on the earth. So that's what I would say. Thank you too.
Okay. Do you have any advice or anything else that you would like to share with those who are watching?
You can do it.
Is that your
It
mantra?
sounds cheesy. It sounds cheesy, but I've noticed in my own life that why do I keep chasing and how do I stay motivated? It's not all the time, but I tell myself, why not? You can do it. And that can be as little as, why not give a smile to that person on the bus today? Or why not go to an Ivy League school? So I think just in those little moments of doubt and of discouragement, just remember, Kaylee says I can do it. Kaylee says, take that courage and do something, because ultimately your actions will change the world.
Thank you. And how can people get a hold of you if they want to connect with you and get to know you better?
They can email me. They can find me on Instagram. My email is kayleetbradford@gmail.com. It's Kaylee with Kaylee. So just typical spelling.
You're occasionally on LinkedIn as well, correct?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I will be better at it, but I do check it. So
great. And do you already know what your thesis is?
no, it's a great question. Right now, it's fostering into looking at Indigenous healing patterns in communities and how we can use that to create peace in the U.S. public schooling system. But we'll see.
Cool. All right. Well, if you have any information for Kaylee or want to get a hold of her, reach out to her. And you never know what type of connections can bring healing to the world. And Kaylee's extremely driven, I promise you that. As you can tell, she's, let's see, how old are you now?
24.
24. I turn 42 tomorrow. So I'm like, I have to do the math, but I'm not going to be able to do it. That epilepsy thing just, took out the whole math aspect. So.
Or just us in general. There's no.
Well, she's accomplished a lot in her 24 years. So, you can tell that she's a gal to know. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Gratitude Stories. And I hope that you have a fabulous day. I'm giving you a giant virtual hug.
You too.
All right. Bye, sis.
Bye.